Hi, very good afternoon to Mr. Chua Tian Po, Chairman and CEO of Hobby Land, Professor Arnaud de Meyer, President of SMU, Professor Tan Chin Tiong, Senior Advisor, Office of President, Professor Jerry George, Dean, SMU Lee Kong Chian School of Business, and our distinguished guests. A very warm welcome to the Hobby Professorship Public Lecture at Singapore Management University. My name is Samantha, and I'll be your host for today. So for today, we're really honored to have Professor Zhongming Wang with us. Professor Wang is a professor of industrial and organizational psychology at Zhejiang University, and he has received his MA and PhD degrees at Gutenberg University and Hangzhou University. He currently holds the Senior Professorship of Social Science at Zhejiang University, and as well, the Hobby Professorship at Singapore Management University. Today, we are really privileged to have Professor Wang deliver a lecture on developing an entrepreneurial and innovative community using research and business experiences from China. It is also my honor to introduce the chair for today's session, Professor Jerry George, Dean of SMU Lee Kong Chian School of Business. We will now invite Professor Jerry to say a few words. Professor Jerry, please.
Welcome, everybody. It is great to have a fantastic group together. Before I start and invite our guest, I just want to say a word of thank you to Mr. Chua, the Hobby Land family, as well as the Business China partnership that we have. It's fantastic that we are able to come together to build these bridges between Singapore and China, and this is one of the key public lectures that we have that strengthens this linkage. A little bit about Professor Wang. I've known him for a few years now in his capacity as the Dean of the School of Management at Zhejiang University, and after that also his continuing effort in entrepreneurship as the Director of the Entrepreneurship Center, as well as his roles in public policy in developing entrepreneurial competencies and working with startups, as well as leveraging that capability for Chinese entrepreneurs. Professor Wang has been very gracious to accept the Hobby Professorship to visit us. And part of his role here when he visits us is to help our faculty develop a broader appreciation of China in terms of its China research, as well as the opportunities for us to then learn to see what are the ways that we can embed this in our teaching, in our curriculum, and give a better exposure for our students. From that perspective, the Hobby Professorship has been incredibly useful, so thank you very much. On a larger scale, Professor Wang has also had a very good exposure in helping businesses grow in the Zhejiang province, as well as in the Hangzhou community, where he's been very active for over 30 years. And several of his graduates who I meet occasionally when I'm walking around with him have grown into fantastic entrepreneurs around the world. So something that he does encourages entrepreneurship, and something that he teaches builds better entrepreneurs. So I'm curious to learn more, and welcome Professor Wang to give his lecture. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I feel really a great honor to have this Hobby Professorship. So thank Mr. Chai and also President, Dean, and everybody supported. Today I want to use this opportunity to share with you some experiences from research and also from the industrial upgrading in China about how we can develop entrepreneurial community. So it's not just a company, a university, or a school, but the whole community need to be upgraded. First, I'd like to do just a quick introduction of the context. I know maybe everybody's been to Zhejiang or Hangzhou, you all know, probably. But I just quickly go through. Zhejiang province is still the most entrepreneurial province in China. Among the top 500 privately owned companies, about 1/3 from Zhejiang province in China. And also, interestingly, it's not just entrepreneurial, it is also intellectual. So among the academicians from Chinese National Academy of Science and Engineering, 1/4 of the members are from Zhejiang province. So science, technology, and entrepreneurship actually, go together from this particular area. And Hangzhou is still the most visited city by domestic tourists. It's not just the beauty, it's more the innovativeness. So it's been the most innovative city in China. These are like, some are like, Alibaba or development zones and so on. In the recent rankings, you Chinese like rankings. So in the recent ranking, it's been ranked still the happiest city to live. I guess Singapore is the happiest country in China, in the world. It is, yeah. So innovativeness and happiness seems also go together with this case. And more important, of course, the successful digital entrepreneurship of Alibaba, and also Geely Volvo is next to us. It's the successful global entrepreneurship by Chinese local companies. And more important, of course, is my university, Zhejiang University. It's ranked again the most innovative university in China in terms of commercialization of patents produced by the university. So we have probably the largest number of patents produced from the universities in China, and also the use of patents to develop business and to develop other sciences. We have, in my school, through the last maybe 15 years, we have developed very successful entrepreneurship programs, including the first PhD program in China in entrepreneurship, master's degree program with Babson from US, and with Lyon Business School from France. And I have been also been involved heavily in this new initiative of developing the 10,000 women entrepreneurs, the China part. Right now, I'm following up 505 women, not for their life, more for entrepreneurship part. So it's a 5-year longitudinal program to see how women can actually enhance their capability of entrepreneurial activities, work at work, or as an owner of the small business. And the last but not least, very important, is the Zhejiang University is building up the largest university incubator in China. If you look at this, here is the Zhejiang University new campus. And this here is the largest dining hall in the world, university dining hall in the world. It can host, the catering capacity is 25,000 students eat at the same time under this tiny building. You need to have an assembly line. And outside this campus, the government has just planned to have a so-called West Hangzhou Innovation and Entrepreneurship Belt. So the plan is to build up the largest incubator and venture villages along the long belt of 105 kilometers long belt of, this is already existing. It's called the Qingshan Lake Science Technology City and the Future Science Technology City. So we'll link these. So this is supposed to be the one of the largest initiative of entrepreneurial development among Chinese educational institutions for this 13th five-year kind of plan in China. So now come to the topic that I want to share with you more specifically. What are the challenges and strategies for the transformation to the more entrepreneurial community or entrepreneurial organizations? So we call industrial upgrading. University in Hangzhou area, Zhejiang, is one of the top universities, and business seems quite successful. However, from this triangle, community development is still the core tasks for many people, because otherwise we won't have a really a good balance in terms of the so-called entrepreneurial ecosystem. So when we have an ecosystem, we need to have university, academic, or business, and also community. Here are the three key issues need to be considered if we want to do a ecosystem type of efforts. First, we need more efforts in social entrepreneurship. So it's not just a technological entrepreneurship. I always say we have two wings, social and technological. And right now we have a very strong, the right wing, and we need to have another left wing of social entrepreneurship. So how to do that if we use community upgrading as a task? Secondly, many companies, they already grow quite large, but either because environmental issues or because the product is being kind of old, or because the whole industry need to be changed. Many companies in that area is facing something called industrial upgrading through intrapreneurship. So intrapreneurship means you do internal entrepreneurial projects or small business to start, sub-business, sub-areas, or new areas, try to upgrade the capacity of innovation in existing large or old companies. So that's the second issue need to be solved. Third one is how we can, normally we have business and university link very strong, and also both business and university has a very strong link with government, but not too much with community. So how to develop a more close relationship with community in order to really promote the development is becoming the third issue. So I want to use this opportunity to share with you three cases, try to demonstrate the kind of experimental still maybe, demonstrate the recent efforts of entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, and also the community development efforts. So using something called, I call it capacity building strategies. So here are three strategies I proposed. First one is called entrepreneurial thinking strategy. This is the way to change people's mindset, from the more state-owned or like just peaceful life, not energetic, very exciting life. Do you want a peaceful or exciting life? Excitement is part of this passion, So using, you change your way of thinking in order to find out new approaches to upgrade things around you. That's the first strategy. Second strategy is, of course, to enhance entrepreneurial competence at the individual level, team level, organizational level. I call it ECS. And the last one is more like for industrial upgrading and change, how we can put the good ideas, strategic plans into action. We still need a model to support. It's not easy. It's been always a big issue in psychology between thinking and action. You maybe think already very happily, but your practical action is still behind, and life is still miserable. You think so busy, so nice in the dream, but then in the real life, you find it's so difficult to start to change. So that's something I call it entrepreneurial action strategy. So first, let's look at a case. The case is called the White Horse Lake. In Hangzhou, there's lots of lakes, West Lake, and this is probably a maybe grandchild of West Lake, kind of a small place, but with a nice name. It's called the Baimahu. Sounds very beautiful, yeah? But it's a countryside already. Hangzhou is much, much smaller than if you've been to Shanghai or Guangzhou or Peking. Hangzhou is still very much concentrated along the lake. Then the government has moved most of the industrial sectors outside to the suburbs. So more like traditionally we think the more countryside, the better. But now, as real estate is going very up in price, or life becomes more like stressful. People like to live more in the wide range of areas of the city. So the countryside is probably a little bit not too much less developed. So how to change that? This is the map. So this is something called the Qiantan River, and this is very important. ZJU is Zhejiang University. GERC is a global entrepreneurship research center, so that's my office. So my office is like 10 minutes from the lake. So that's why it's a happiest city. It's kind of so close to the lake. But we also have wetland and a West Lake. Traditionally, people only built the northern part of the river, but not the south. It's like in Beijing. You will find the south area is less developed. People like higher level, cooler. Maybe also in Singapore. You don't divide south and north. It's about the same area, yeah? So industrial development-wise, this southern part is being more for IT, for multinationals. They start all R&D centers, so the high-tech zone. And this area is called White Horse Lake area, and it's now still the national animation base for creative industry. So Hangzhou government want to do creative industry to be the pillar of Hangzhou city. So the question is how to do this when we have so much countryside. In the entrepreneurial thinking, I'm talking about 3 key important dimensions: critical thinking or creative thinking, responsibility thinking, cooperation, construction, and execution. So these are the most theory. I don't want to bother you with the theoretical model, but look at this. These are the impractical way to think about the new mindset. So the new mindset is want to change the community into more innovative, more responsible to people and to the residents, and also to the social community, and to be cooperative, to be constructive, and to be implemental. If you have new plans, you just not you can't have a government just talking and not doing anything. So these are the 5 elements of something I called the new mindset. So when we say the new mindset, we're thinking how innovative this mindset would be, how responsible, cooperative, constructive, and implementable. Implementable is a new one of thinking, because when people say thinking, it's like just a thought, but not doing anything. But now it's being kind of embedded into action. So that's the framework. What we did is, first of all, in Hangzhou, there's a very famous university called Chinese University of Fine Arts. It's the top one fine arts university in China. Lots of very, very famous Chinese painters from that particular university. However, for ordinary students, in China, it's still very difficult to make living by painting. Have you thought about the painting and live? That's very difficult. It's not enough. And to be teachers in the schools to teach arts, it's full, you know. So always there's a gap between very great artists and thousands of students who are interested in arts but not be able to develop so good in Korea. And now with the entrepreneurial setting, the president of that university decided to promote creative industry, creative entrepreneurship, or we call arts entrepreneurship. He is probably the first Chinese president in universities in Hangzhou, in that area, to write to the government, say, the university wants to have an art entrepreneurship park on campus. So like by design or, you know, different types of using the painting, design, and to do this. So what they did was to open up a sub-branch in this White Horse Lake area, try to change the whole area into a more artistic way. So what they did was they re-renovate all the farmers. This is something missing here. So farmers' house, artistically, but not just art, not just look beautiful. It's also more scientific, that you can start doing business inside. So they then invite creative industry projects to move into this area. Share the rent, there's a VCs there, and also government grant support, and also venture profits for the economic part. But also, they built up something called a social entrepreneurial culture, you know, with some dimensions, and then they have lots of good venture services. So this is, I could not get a photo inside. Actually, inside is more artistic than looking from outside. If you look at these buildings, it's already quite artistic or funny. Probably look artistic, yeah? These are the ones more larger companies moved in there. The small ones, the startups, for incubators, they all move into these buildings. These are farmers' buildings. So in the farmers' building, you know, most of the children, the young generation, they all found jobs in the cities. So it's an empty house, empty buildings. So why not? You can rent this building to the Fine Arts University and share the profits. So that's the business model. And also upgrade the whole environment and the design of the whole area. So these are the ones that looking from outside. And it's been very, very successful. So this is just an example to see how the relatively backward countryside community can be upgraded with a more advanced, creative, entrepreneurial efforts. And at the same time, you know, there's a economic benefits from the profits from there. There's quite a few already joint ventured with overseas, particularly with France and Italy. There probably are more artists doing business from those countries. So that's the first case. The second case is related to a company also maybe half privately owned. It's a smart business. It's like this. You know, I talk about Zhongguanchun, but today I won't say something about Zhongguanchun. I'm doing an important book of Zhongguanchun cases, will be published this year. So hopefully, but that's in Chinese. Hopefully I can have an English version. But today I want to focus on this one. It's called Enjoyer. And what their business, if you look at their business, is how their business linked or embedded into community, and the business development changed the whole way of thinking of community life. So here is the three big business. The first, they have, in China, most of the cities are doing so-called smart city initiative, more information or internet-connected city is becoming more important. You know, with also, we call, in Hangzhou, we say one card. It's probably true here. You can use one card to cover everything in the life you needed for using card. It's true here. Or you have several cards, so you don't need to have a big, kind of pocket to hold all sorts of cards. It's only one card. So it's called a one card smart city initiative. But what they did is to create a smart city incubator, try to help cities around China, not just the area, to prepare themselves in terms of information system development or the interface with residents, the whole design of this. So they did the smart buildings, smart cities, and smart community projects. They have lots if you go to internet, you can find they have the projects around China. Second, they have they built something called Smart Venture I-Valley, so intellectual valley, with smart properties, smart industrial park, which actually means industrial park and internet plus, or big data plus, something like that. And they also have something called smart venture villages. So it's not just to connect all the startups together in the system. And also they have venture investments. Then they have recently, all of a sudden the Chinese government want all the university students to learn entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship course has been the compulsory course for all undergraduate students, and we have more than 7 million per year. So all of a sudden we lack of professors to teach entrepreneurship for 7 million undergraduate students. And so what we need for teaching or learning entrepreneurship is the platform, and we call makerspace. So this company is very sensitive to opportunities. They found all of China thinking about 7 million want to start projects of kind of startups. How many spaces, how much spaces they need. Lots of a big potential for business. So they started an initiative called Smart Makerspace Initiative to go to almost every city with universities, saying that they can have a new generation of makerspace. It's not just a platform. It's more internet-based and digitally connected, this type. So they have like a university community, a makerspace, hackerspace, and Kickstarter space. In the first floor, do you say first floor? First floor means ground floor. Yeah, in Singapore. Okay. In the first floor of King George's School, there's quite a few of Kickstarters there, but only for eating. You know, cakes or sandwiches. Kickstart means you can just like start a car to start the engine very quickly, and then got very energetic and passionate to do business. So these are also new. These are makerspace, hackerspace, and a Kickstarter space. So they kind of move into new business recently. They also do community e-business, and finally, smart business incubators. Because in China, most of incubators most old incubators are like renting the houses, the spaces. Nothing really connected with a good service or skill development something. So these are the three big business, and we've been working with them. I have been using them as a case. I'm now still doing this longitudinal case because they are expanding so rapidly. The case study is too slow to catch up all these new developments. So we are doing competence development program to support them. We have now started something called Smart Business Growth Network among all these subsidiaries, and also have they use green entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship and also capacity building. So that's the second case. And here is, I didn't have time to put that into English, but this is just an example to show their business around China. You know, these little lights, dots are the cities with very active business, but they are now starting these 4 circles in the 4 different areas, including Sichuan, Qinghai, and Tibet area for this smart city, smart valley, and smart building or smart city kind of initiatives. And we found 4 competencies are very important for them to expand their business. The first, of course, the new opportunity capture. So it's not just the recognition. You can recognize easily, but you can't can you capture them very effectively. And also integration of the resources. The other competence is important, something we call teaming. Teaming means how several teams can work together is more important than the team members can work within the team. So these initiatives are very much cross borders, cross areas, cross industrial sectors. And when you have projects, it's often people have very different knowledge, and they need to interact with each other, collaborate, and also compete. And also have this business innovation and change development. We are writing this in-depth case right now, and if you're interested, we can maybe follow up this talk. The third case is related to I call it entrepreneurial action strategy. How people can upgrade from old company to a new industrial development company. And this is called Tiannan Power. They produce batteries for motorcycles and also for small, now this is called a green, energy saving, clean energy cars. You don't have clean energy cars here, not too much. Yeah, in China they say next round of development will be the clean energy car development. Nobody will buy these polluted, the older version. This company is being very successful, and they started 1986 and being listed 2007. And the 58% of the market and also top 5, and they say they are top 15 in the amount 500 in the world. And it's probably the largest employment company in that area, both from the industrial sector, also from the county. However, these old batteries are very, very much polluted. So it's a high pollution business. So the government every year wants them to close down. The government say, if you're not closed, I won't be the mayor. They don't say, I won't live here, but as they say, they may lose the job because the central government counting how many being closed. So this is a close down is you have to do this. However, with 90% of employees are under old business, and they can't be transformed. They did a demonstration in the street. They say, I want to live, want jobs. It's very difficult. So government say close, close, close. And employees all say live, 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 So it's been a very big social conflict for quite a few years. And also, if they want to move into clean technology, clean energy battery, most of IPs, the existing IPs is invented in Japan. Very few being invented in China. So they need to have to enhance their R&D capacity very quickly. And so how to do that? That's the case problem. What they did is they want to do this through intrapreneurship. As I said, from internal entrepreneurship. Intrapreneurship, they did 3 things. One is they start entrepreneurial projects and try to invite the old business employees who is being university education, with university education to participate. These, in order to do something called learning through projects. So not just invite a professor to teach, but to invite them to participate into various type of more innovative projects. Try to reallocate them, prepare and reallocate them. Second, they have developed something called open innovation teams, connected with, the best, they told me the best professors in the battery industry are mostly in Tongji University in Shanghai. Tongji, it's very famous for architecture and urban science. So they developed, and this is in a small county. The Tongji professors won't like to work there, or even to do business, to do projects there. So they need to establish this innovation center in Shanghai, or maybe not Shanghai. Shanghai is not good to live. So in Hangzhou, happiest city, Westlake, and so on. So that's their initiative, very, very successful. They also invite experts from overseas to do that. The third one is change the whole business model. The business model is to have the old business model is a high production and high pollution and high profits. Now, because high pollution and is not allowed, so they have to cut down. However, the new battery business is much long term. You can't make it more profitable in the shorter run. So what do you do in between is becoming we call innovation space. So you have an innovation space. Otherwise, if you don't utilize that, then you lost the time. You wait for the new battery to produce profits. It's many years later. So these are the 2 issues they've been built into this entrepreneurship. So here is, we call it green entrepreneurship. So first, this GE is not General Electric. This is green entrepreneurship, yeah? So because I thought the reason I say GE is because the space is so limited in the slide, so it's shortened. So it's a green entrepreneurship change adaptation. They did 2 actions to start with. One is called talent action, which is to prepare their employees to have a change readiness. You need to prepare everybody, say, in order to have a long-term sustainable development, you need to change your mindset and skills and try to create new business groups. The second part is the organizational level. I call it organizational mindset. So it's more like a culture, the core of the culture. So they did it very carefully. And then the big problem in change is always cross-functional conflicts, because different departments may not be able to coordinate in a new way. The old behavioral model is so much fixed, and it's hard to change. So these are the 2 things. And I call it phase A. A means adaptation. Then we have a phase S. The phase S is for strategy selection, green entrepreneur strategy selection. So they select Intrapreneurship. In Intrapreneurship, 4 things are very crucial. One is you need to generate good new projects, so that everybody can be participative. You can't generate something only a few are skillful to do that. So you really need to have a more innovative new ideas in the way everybody's job is relevant. That's the key. Second, of course, internal funding to support, seed money, etc. Third is the teaming issue I talked about. How cross teams, how you coordinate or collaborate. And finally, how you can get performance quickly produced. You can have quick, fast performance, not like changing for several years, there's no results. So it's more result-oriented. And finally, we have this, the third, we call phase D, that's for development. It's mostly using the new culture. You really need to use culture to fix the values and fix the people's commitment. So when I met with this CEO, this owner, he said, Professor Wang, if I want to have a sustainability in change the culture. If you don't have a new culture, it won't be sustainable. So they use the culture to, they develop something called green business model with a very good cultural development, and also try to use the community, because everybody, the whole area need to be green too. The whole area of communities need to have this, the culture. Okay, so finally, I want to conclude, what I talk about these 3 cases is all related to the process of transformation, change, and upgrading. How to do that? Through the years, I produced a new model of change. It's called an ASD model. The model is about, I have lots of academic papers to do this, but here I just want to put it into a more simple way. If you understand, so adaptation is for change mindset building. So you need to adapt people for the change. Second is select your strategies, and mostly around entrepreneurship. There's many ways to do entrepreneurship, so you still need to have a good selection of different strategies, and this competence strategy is definitely a most popular way to do that. And finally, it's called development. In order to be sustainable, you need to have a good developmental preparation for the change. And I call it change action. So you have more developmental actions to support. So this ASD model is being used for the case studies that I carried out in the past for these entrepreneurial development. So I probably done these 30 or 40 minutes, and I probably could have some questions if I may. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wang. We've covered several topics from art entrepreneurship, smart incubation, green power, and so forth. The biggest transformation that I see in China, at least, is changing the nature of innovation, sort of moving from an imitation-based economy to an innovation-based economy. And part of that is the change in skills, the change in infrastructure required to innovate. And now you see companies like Xiaomi and so forth who are in 5 to 6 years becoming multi-billion-dollar enterprises. So if you think about this, what are the fundamental changes in how we teach people to adapt to this model of innovation? You can.
That's your question.
Yes.
I actually developed a good way to do this. I always say my approach is a good.
It's okay.
Sorry about this. Because you know, it's hard. First of all, people say how you can teach entrepreneurship. You know, not to say Xiaomi, if even Dami, you can't do that. You know, how entrepreneurship seems from you born. And I always telling people that no, that's not totally correct. Maybe 30% correct, but there's something wrong. If you do, for instance, just you work at Taobao, you know Taobao, you probably don't need to learn too much. You know, you don't need to learn. However, with this IP or patent or global business, something more complicated. So you really need to be trained. This second part, which probably consists like more than 85%. So only 15 from your bone. However, for this Xiaomi case, this more rapid development, how to teach, I developed something called Entrepreneurship Action Research Model. What we did was to start from problem-driven. So it's always you bring into educational setting key issues, problems. And then we try to do group learning. It's a big story. But I'm now developed a course. Do you know I will teach after this visit, I will teach a course in Zhejiang University on entrepreneurship for MBA students. I do 1 credit online and 1 credit offline. Offline is through Makerspace, not just I'm talking. So with projects. And right now, already more than 700 students registered. Only me teaching. In the past, it's not possible, you know, for a professor, even a good professor, you can't teach 700 at the same time. It's not children. Even children, you need to be very careful, only 10 or 20. So what I used is this action learning approach. It's different from case learning. Case learning is to learn what other people is doing. Action learning is learning by doing by yourself. So it's much more effective. Hopefully.
Thank you. Just wonder if there are any questions on the floor. Yes, please. Could you state your name and then, if you're loud enough, that's okay. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Hello. Hi, my name is Olivier. I'm French, as you can tell by my accent. I've lived in China, in Hangzhou, for 2 years. I was actually living in Binjiangqu, near, I was working for a Super Group, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was, sorry. and
Super, yeah.
Supor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was working there for 2 years next to the Alibaba headquarters. And according to the biography of Jack Ma from Chen Wei is saying that Jack Ma is running his business as a Laoban. So if you take the Laoban word, it means Lao. Lao is old, and Ban is bored. So he's basically the boss setting the rules.
Oh, the board.
Yes, the boss setting the rules. But when you take in Silicon Valley, a company like Amazon, you have Jeff Bezos who's running his business, but yet you have a software engineer called Benjamin Black who initiated the cloud computing offering. So the innovation comes from bottoms up, which seems to be a bit different from the China model. So my question to you would be, if you want Chinese company to be more innovative, do you think they're going to kind of copy the Silicon Valley model?
No. You mean in Binjiang, in China, whether they could copy Silicon Valley? I think Silicon Valley model is maybe we can do half copying. When we say half, is the spirit part. The practice part is still difficult if you do that. You know, I do this Zhongguanchun in the north in Beijing, and they actually learned a lot from Silicon Valley in the way that you know, tolerate. There are two things that are important, and I think the Hangzhou Silicon, you know, Hangzhounese also claim Hangzhou is the Chinese Silicon Valley.
Yes.
Also in Beijing, they say that's Silicon Valley. Everybody wants to be Silicon Valley. But in Hangzhou, they also learned quite a lot because they have offices in Silicon Valley. So I always say two things they are copying. One is tolerate failure. Second, talk to your competitors. So these are the two things very important. You really need to copy. Otherwise, you can't copy technology, no. And the model of leading, by the way, Jack Ma is really the Laoban. And, but he has a very good team, actually. And he shared most of the, the economical outcomes with them. So that's the good part. But on the other hand, Alibaba still need to be upgraded with internal entrepreneurial activities. So recently, I'm helping them to try to make it more like Intrapreneurship. Is still very, very important. Otherwise, it probably don't want to last as long as we expected. It probably might be a bit shorter.
Okay, thank you.
Another question? Yes, please.
This is a very hard one.
It's too high.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shelley, and I really enjoyed learning about your model, and I have a quick application question. So one of the key challenges in China is actually the rural-urban divide, and rural tourism has been a way to close this gap. So basically developing an entrepreneurial model for rural tourism. But in most of your models, the action or initiative is actually university-led, and I'm wondering if it's possible for, let's say, a rural village committee to have the intellectual and resource capital needed to develop a rural enterprise by themselves.
No, it's not. It's probably the study is university-led.
Okay.
But in practice, it's actually generated the needs from the community. Okay. It's not a university. We don't go there and say, you must change. No. When they are moving, we say, let's do a case study. So we went there and tried to give some suggestions. Otherwise, they won't receive us. So we need to behave like we are helpful and with some suggestions. But not, we don't really lead the change.
Okay.
Because, and this model of this White Horse Lake model is being now learned by the western area of China quite a lot. You know, in the provinces like Sichuan and Guizhou. Do you know Guizhou?
Yes, I'm going there.
You went there?
No, I'm going there to do research on rural tourism.
Oh, very
Yeah.
good. Because they have a big project in Guizhou, this White House Lake project. And so there's a great demand from local communities. Try to say, okay, we can not only re-renovate all the housing, but at the same time, we're being more profitable. You know, so real estate becomes more creative. It's not just a money kind of exchange or raise of money or interest rate. It's more like change the whole nature of their residential area. And Guizhou is another case. You should do a case. Are you a business school professor or?
I'm a student, but our professor is doing the action learning system.
Oh, yo. Guizhou is the ideal place because it's relatively backward, and you do more things from backward areas. You can learn more, you know, because they like to change, to be changed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a question, given that you've taken the Hobby Professorship, about commercial real estate and this idea of incubation space.
Yeah.
Right. So earlier, a few years ago, there were more incubators than entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It still is the case in many places, including Singapore. So when you say words like 7 million entrepreneurs and so forth,
No, 7 million graduate students.
students who would
year.
study entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
even then, there is a huge scale effect in trying to figure out new opportunities, new places to put them,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
also the existing churn of failed businesses and so forth. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in how the landscape of real estate itself is changing to accommodate entrepreneurship or to accommodate collaboration, or I'm just wondering, similar to your ideas of maker space, what are they doing which is so unique?
You know, the old generation of incubators are just the real estate usage of the buildings and the rooms. Maybe from about 2 or 3 years ago, people start to do more like ecological maker space. So more ecologically planned for not just the space, but more support to the maker side. So in Hangzhou, it's under transition of old incubators into this newly so-called eco-environment building for entrepreneurship. It's been very, very popular. Mostly, I try to add a learning component into, so learning and developmental component. And so in Hangzhou, there are at least 5 these are old buildings. We call, you know, these are really not maker space, a dying space from a transition of industries. So we are now developing a new model of incubator. And to make it more ecological and also more like a learning platform rather than just doing business itself. It's been quite, I'm doing a case actually on this, and very successful, a very successful change for this.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
You've been all to Hangzhou.
Yes.
Yeah. Next time to Hangzhou, come to my center, and I take you to see these new generation of makerspace, incubators. It's very, very interesting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Professor. My name is Ko Keng Hua. Thanks very much for the excellent presentation. I'm particularly interested in your effort or in your research to create centers of entrepreneurship in the lesser developed parts of China, Tibet, Guizhou, and you know, I can understand why Horse Lake is in Hangzhou, is one of the most prosperous provinces and very near to a very prosperous city. The talents are there, the universities are there. You know, I was in Guizhou, I was in Shanxi and some of the poorer areas. I think the challenge is how to attract the entrepreneurial talents to want to move there or to remain there, because the opportunities, the living environment, the infrastructure, the school, the universities, the professors, you know. So I just want to understand, since you have a case study on Guizhou, on Zhejiang and so on, how are you attracting the whole talent ecosystem of entrepreneurs, of incubator mentors, of professors, of technologists to transfer to them? How are you attracting this to the much lesser developed areas of China?
Thank you.
That's good. Yes, that's a more a strategic kind of a strategy question. I think right now is a good time because in China, the Prime Minister and the President are all talking about entrepreneurship and innovation. So generally speaking, everybody now have the intention. The question is how to carry out this with a good, effective actions. It's still quite difficult outside the university. Inside the university is probably much easier. So like this venture village type of initiatives within the university, or the university and the community initiatives are still more popular. I did a project with this 10,000 women entrepreneurship, and many of them are from backward areas. So what we did is to working with industrial associations and also with the development zones for this part. I guess if we want to really enhance entrepreneurial activities, we probably will have to work with different industrial development zones and to do this. I have started, of course, as you said, it's probably limited just from Hangzhou, but we have started a 30 university network in China, try to promote entrepreneurship education. It's not just students, it's more like professionals. So now, right now, I'm running a network of 30 university network of trying to develop capabilities for professionals. So professional technicians, managers, and maybe individual entrepreneurs. We still have a big task to train people to do that. So it's a good question. It's still a long way to do this. Although universities all got a compulsory course established, and I'm involving in this training of trainer programs to teach professors how to work with students on this. So I'm launching already 5 networks in China in different, because now I'm not a dean, so I'm more kind of free man to do whatever I feel interested. So I'm trying to use my expertise to develop 5 small networks in the regions, including this Guizhou area, to develop capacity building for universities. It's still a big challenge. If you want to teach 7 million per year, this is not to teach them to start business. This is to teach them to understand the entrepreneurial spirit, innovation ability. It's probably maybe much less than 5% really starting business.
Okay, thank you.
So,
One last question. Yes, sir.
it's really tall, this.
Good afternoon, Professor George, Professor Wang, distinguished panel of dignitaries. My name is Barnabas Leong. I'm a visiting prof, teaching innovation, entrepreneurship, and change from University of Buckingham. My question, interestingly, you mentioned about the TCA, my acronym, which is primarily what the TCA stands for: thinking, competence, as well as action. You also interestingly mentioned about the ASD model, just to refresh the floor, primarily leads to action, which is primarily changing mindset, what we call paradigm shift. Selection, which is strategy, and development, which is the change action. You also mentioned about the entrepreneurship research model. The girl from the floor mentioned about action learning research. So my question is very simple. Not too long back, I believe the press reported that China is having an economic slowdown. Yeah. You also mentioned the fact that, well, we can actually pick up entrepreneurship, what you call practices, probably out of China. But it's nothing like going to China. Recently, I had the good fortune to lecture in Peita, Guanghua School of Business. Okay. I also had the pleasure, immense pleasure, to also speak to the alumni from University of Pennsylvania, Wharton Business School. Mm-hmm. So the students from both uni actually directed questions at me. Said, Prof, given the fact that entrepreneurship is not something new. In fact, 23 years ago when I did my MBA with Hao, entrepreneurship was actually introduced more than 2.5 decades. So entrepreneurship is very important. Young people, particularly in Singapore, they wanted to be their own bosses, their own laoban, so to speak. But again, you need to go back to classroom to pick up the skills. Of course, Jack Ma, you mentioned, he has a very good team that he can launch Alibaba literally out of mainland China and have it listed in America. You mentioned about Xiaomi, Huawei.
Can I
so and so forth. So my question is very simple. I'm sorry. So my question is that how can inspiring or budding entrepreneurs attempt to pick up some of the strategies that have been expounded by Professor Wang Zhongming in order to effectively lift up the whole idea and to turn a dream into reality? Thank you.
That's a big question. I can't teach millions of them, but I really produced already a book supposed to be read by 10 million. Hopefully it's been sold out. I think the way we are doing is to strengthen the action learning oriented entrepreneurial educational programs. And I'm doing quite a lot on this. It's not just the case learning, it's more action-oriented, is probably the most effective way to do that. In China, we need to do that through the networks, and then half government. So I have, for this purpose, I have, my book on entrepreneurship competence is being designated by the Ministry of Human Resources to be the compulsory textbook for all the professionals, not the students. I think the students still need to learn knowledge and techniques more carefully. Now the big portion of the population is these existing employees and professional people. This competence development is more important for them who are on job. We can probably start a joint venture to do this. You know, I hope with SMU we will have more collaboration to do this.
We have something called the Skills Future, which
Yeah.
is about transforming our own skills base in
Yes.
Singapore.
Yeah.
But I have to make a pitch, given that you've talked about Zhejiang, I have to make a pitch for SMU. We have, I know it may be a bit late, but we've just launched our entrepreneurship major with the action learning component as central to it.
Very good.
So all our students, when they choose the entrepreneurship major, will do a practicum course, which involves every student creating a venture and trying out this idea. That includes a little bit of funding that every student would start out with $1,000 to help prototype or develop the product or service. And then they'll present it to a panel to get the next round of funding to go forward. So we are trying to integrate that, not because sometimes these tend to be successful and sometimes not. But the whole idea of action learning and entrepreneurship is so crucial for as a lifelong skill that we think it's important to put it within our curriculum itself. And we've also changing our core course where we're thinking, we are putting in a new course similar to what you're saying about entrepreneurial thinking.
Yeah.
Our biggest challenge in Singapore is we grow up being told what to do, that our students somehow expect to be told how to be entrepreneurial. So we are trying to change that model where we introduce entrepreneurial thinking, opportunity framing, managing risk, understanding risk as part of that curriculum itself. So
That's very good.
I want to close and say thank you very much.
I have one comment though.
Yes.
I suggest you send these students to Hangzhou for a incubator internship.
Yes.
Because we can have an internship with your students running, you know, really to experience failure and success there.
Correct. And
Let's do that.
That is part of our plan. We are trying to think of a regional entrepreneurship network to build this idea of incubating here and then exchanging ideas within the region so that our students will have the capacity to testbed their ideas, whether it's in China or Indonesia or Philippines, so that we would develop more robust business models.
Yes, yes.
Professor Wang,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you.
So once again, thank you, Professor Jerry and Professor Wang, for the interesting Q&A. So we've come to the end of the session, and there are some refreshments at the foyer. Please help yourselves. Have a good evening.